Okay, hey, welcome everybody. This is Chad McDaniel with Execs in the Know, and what a pleasure to have you joining us today for a very special webinar. And I'm quite interested to learn more in this topic that we're about ready to embark on. We talk about some time motion studies, ways to improve the agent and journey, which is very near and dear to all of us in our I guess, daily lives of what we do. But wherever you are right now and listening, thank you so much for your listenership. Thank you so much for your participation with Execs in the Know. And one of the things that we really strive as a community of CX best practice thought leadership sharing is bringing on guests like Mary and Charlene, which I'll introduce here very shortly, to really help us in some of the peeling the onion back in the journey of topic-based subjects and thought leadership. So Finn has been a fantastic supporter of our community. We've loved working with them, and some of you have had the chance to meet with them along our journey together. So I have a couple of quick housekeeping stuff before we get started here. We're going to hold questions towards the end, but I really would ask that your questions are important. There's going to be a lot of information I know Mary and Charlene have put together. So I know there's going to be some questions. So please, at the end, I'll make sure I'll get your questions out there, and let's try to make the most of our time together of learning and sharing. So please get the questions for us. We're quite thrilled and excited to get together live again at the Customer Response Summit in a great part of the world or the country here. It's Coronado, California. We are actively out there with early bird pricing and other opportunities, a great speaker group. I hope you'll come join us October 24th and the 26th for the two-day meetings and sessions that we have planned. If you're new to Execs in the Know, welcome. Really, for the last 15 years, this has been my passion and journey about driving a community of leaders like yourself in kind of what we say leaders learning from leaders and sharing best practices and insights. And if you go to our website, execsintheknow.com, there is a ton of information with content, research, publication, just all sorts of things that can help within your journey and day-to-day success within your practitioner area. We have a fantastic board. I just want to say thank you to all of our leaders that help guide the direction and the conversation topics of need. These individuals sit in the chair, and they also are very much active about advancing our industry as a whole. So I couldn't say thank you enough to our entire corporate advisory board of Execs in the Know. If you are one of our corporate listeners and users, I really invite and encourage you to join our private online community. This is where you can connect with hundreds of other leaders 24/7 in a digital environment. And there are some amazing conversation threads that are taking place. I've had so many people say they get so much out of the online community. Just feel free to drop me a note, chat@execsintheknow.com, and I'll be happy to send you some more information. All right. Well, enough about Execs in the Know, Mary and Charlene. It's an absolute pleasure and honor to have both of you. And Mary, going back, I was sharing, I know you were at Lyft, and you'll give a little more background of some stuff with us here, but we've had the pleasure of working with you and the leadership, and you're just an amazing soul. So Mary, we're very fortunate to have you in this industry. Charlene, same with you and all the initiatives you've been driving over there at Finn. So what I'd like to do for the purpose of our audience, let's give a little bit of quick backdrop to your backgrounds and roles, and then let's jump into the conversation.
Hi, thank you. Thanks, Chad. Always a pleasure to work with you and Execs in the Know.
Thank you.
A great audience of folks to connect with, and fun to be able to do it virtually in this time. Mary Winfield, I am recently come to Finn. My most recent customer experience role leading an organization was at Lyft for 6 years. And so I just recently came over to Finn to be our segment leader focused on CX. And prior to that was at Intuit, ran TurboTax customer experience, Sophos, IBM, as well as starting my career at General Electric.
Welcome and thank you. Charlene, good to see you. I know you're traveling on the road right now, but thank you for getting some time for us.
Yeah, thank you, Chad. Yeah, you can probably see I'm in a hotel room right now. Yeah, so Charlene, I lead marketing here at Fin. I've been with Fin for about a year now. So it's been quite the journey. And it's been great to just see all the exciting things that we're trying to build in this space. Prior to that, I'd been at Coupa, went through their IPO and quite a lot of growth. And one of the roles I actually did for a short stint was to actually look at our customer support teams and what was happening with a lot of our customer support and the CX side. So definitely could see the need for something like Fin. And it's been very exciting to actually come to Fin and see this product being built and put out into the world.
Well,
So
we're going to embark on a topic that I think is near and dear to a number of members in our community, Charlene and Mary. So I know we've got a lot to talk about, and if we just go ahead and dig in, I'm going to turn it over to the two experts.
great.
Thanks, Chad. So I'll kick it off with just kind of grounding us in where we are. You know, the world has really changed. I think we're all feeling that on a day-to-day basis right now. But the same macro trends that have been enabling a disruptive product experience. If you think about, we used to buy furniture in a store, and I was just recently buying furniture for my mom who moved into a new home, and she was blown away buying furniture online. It was absolutely a new experience for her. Personally, I've seen this up close at Lyft, where we went from disrupting taxis and taxi rides to shared rides, and then to autonomous in about a year period of time. And so it was a whirlwind of how much the world has changed. I think with that, higher expectations from customers, more complicated use case, and higher customer experience expectations. Our customer experience teams are dealing with higher volume at higher volume, more complexity and louder. Then you add in all the disruption in how and where we do work to the support experiences. Customer operations teams have to use more and more applications, making it harder for them to find better ways to delight customers. What I know after 25 years of work is that associate engagement and empowerment has become the most important factor in building great organizations and delivering great outcomes.
Yeah, so the funny story about Fin is we actually started as a AI-based assistant, and it seemed like a really fun business to do at the time. But then what we really quickly discovered was that we needed lots and lots of people to actually support all the requests we were getting from our customers. And as part of that process, what we started finding was, so your customer comes in, engages your team. What you hope would happen is request comes in, agent picks up the request, goes in the CRM, looks maybe at a knowledge base article or two, back in CRM, tickets closed, everything's nice and neat. What actually happens a lot of times is agent picks up the request, goes to CRM, goes to knowledge base, gets confused, goes into Slack, starts Googling things, gets distracted, goes to another knowledge base article, on and on and on, eventually closing the ticket. And if you're lucky, it ends up staying closed. And what we actually know happens now that we have Fin implemented and we're actually able to see all the different iterations of this, is there are so many different ways that all these different paths happen. And if you're trying to get to the heart of what's actually going on and how to enable your team better, it is extremely difficult. So meanwhile, you're thinking about which tool should I be using? Which steps should these people be taking? How do I actually improve any of this for better outcomes, for better experiences, for better operational efficiency? And the things that matter are the actual customer experience. How do I make this experience be done in a way that's actually efficient? And how do I do all this in a way that actually mitigates risks? Which leads to the next problem. And this is why a lot of companies start turning towards other solutions.
So what does time and motion studies have to do with this? And I think back, I think the first time and motion study I did was about 25 years ago in the GE data center. And so as we've been talking about this, it's funny to kind of think back to that experience. But since the early 20th century, teams have been using time and motion studies to break tasks down into measurable subunits so that they could measure it and understand it and then optimize for efficiency. So time and motion studies gather detailed data. And I think many of you know this. You've either launched time and motion studies or you've participated in them. And so the studies gather detailed data on how long and which movements a person is using to perform a task, right? It started in industry and moved to our online worlds and technology. Some studies ask employees to track themselves. Most have observers watch employees and document what they're seeing, basically shadowing workers and taking notes. For many companies, these insights don't surface because of how difficult it is to do that type of time and motion study. Next slide. So how Fin works, a key I learned along my personal journey is that to deliver great outcomes, you have to understand what's actually happening in the experience, both for employees and customers. For myself, I've joined each company and put myself to work on the front line, going through training, handling cases, shadowing teams, and doing detailed sessions with agents to understand the experience. So when I come on board and throughout any role I've had, I spend a lot of time really shadowing and trying to understand what's happening in the actual experience. We believe there's a much better way to measure and optimize workflow and process. We're focused on the future of work, I think, where we're leveraging technology to quickly understand how work gets done and finding opportunities to improve the experience. We believe we've found a better way to let the data and the process speak for themselves. And so how do we do that? Fin has a lightweight Chrome extension, which automates observation and aggregation of workflow data, and it runs continually in the background. We unobtrusively paint a complete, accurate, real-time picture of workflows across SaaS applications. We're also able to collect a much greater volume of data than typical time and motion studies to drive better statistical significance. By using our process insights for about 10 weeks to automatically map and improve process workflows, one organization achieved a 70% reduction in handle time, while another example company was able to process 4 times the amount of work to allow their employees to, in a tenth of the time, to allow their employees to spend more time on interesting and challenging tasks.
So from all this data that we've collected, we've actually been able to do some really interesting research into some of the trends we're seeing across the board and some of the benchmarks we've seen. So we publish this customer operations benchmarks every year. And this comes from this browser extension that we have, which collects very, very granular data, observational data across tens of millions of hours of agent work time. And we find a couple of very interesting things all the time. So one of the things is how much time is spent on unproductive activities that don't really move the needle for the experiences that you're looking to deliver. How many interactions it takes to close tickets. What applications actually impact agent engagement and productivity, and then things like hardware and internet speeds and how that actually impacts your handle times, how it impacts the agent experience. Just a couple of the highlights that we've seen. The average agent spends a third of their workday on activities that don't really contribute to closing tickets. And kind of another kind of follow-up on that is many companies miss out on about 275 hours of potential productive hours per agent per year. This is kind of on the bottom quartile, but even the average company we've seen is missing out almost 200 hours of productivity each year. This isn't just, we don't assume that the agents will work themselves to death all the way until, the full amount of their workday, but this is just very much looking at top performers and then the difference between those top performers and then the rest of the cohort of agents that you have. So what we're seeing is there's a huge difference between what is going into highly productive agents and then how other agents are interacting. Now, that's fine and all, but the real question is, what do you do with that? How do you actually improve? So this is one of the things that we've tried to really look into as Fin, and in our own experience, again, kind of looking at our own teams when we built this initially for ourselves, which is what drives engagement and utilization. And we're able to kind of break that down into specific types of activities that really kind of pull your agents away from their daily workflows. So we give a level of granularity that allows you to not only see where engagement and utilization is kind of decreasing, but also what are some of the factors that go into that. Now, the caveat here is, of course, no one's going to be 100% productive all the time. And that shouldn't be a fair expectation for anyone on your team. But there's always opportunities to improve. And we've also seen in our data that there are people who are significantly outperforming on the basis of just ways that they've discovered to get their work done. And that is something that can be replicated across the team. Now, this is probably something that isn't very surprising, but we find that a lot of cases are very easy to close. But then there's this cohort of cases that are just really, really finicky. And about 10% of those cases require 11 or more interactions to finally close. And that is, again, that's one of those no duh statements, but how do you actually solve for that, right? So one of the things we try to do is really break down the areas that make it very difficult for agents to be effective when it comes to closing specific types of tickets or to addressing certain types of issues. So here, for instance, you might be looking at a case where somebody isn't able to find their knowledge base articles and ends up kind of searching around and trying to figure out how to close a ticket without the right enablement. Another thing that we try to give is insight into the exact workflows and processes that go into certain types of tickets. So for example, here you can start on the left and see, okay, everyone starts maybe in the CRM or ticketing system. And then from there, they start moving around and you quickly start getting a branching tree of the different areas that they go into. And we've had customers who were very surprised by a lot of the different paths that their agents were taking. And moreover, they were actually surprised by some of the paths that their agents were taking that were more effective than what they would have originally prescribed. So these are all important insights that you need to start digging into if you really want to understand, A, how your tickets are being closed, and moreover, how your agents are actually spending their time. But also B, how do you enable them to actually do that more effectively and at the same time have a much better experience as they're doing all these activities. Another thing that we find very interesting is when you actually start looking at the different types of applications that agents are using, certain applications actually predict better engagement and productivity. And so for instance, probably not super surprising, but it's great to kind of see the data actually support this, is time spent in the CRM is actually very strongly correlated to how effective your team members are. We see that as well, where the more time that agents are spending in communication apps, usually the less effective they are. And that could be for a variety of reasons, but when you actually go talk to a lot of these agents and understand it, a lot of times what they're doing is they're trying to ask for help, they're trying to ask for answers. So that means that they're either not enabled properly or there's something that is missing for them. And so you can start seeing that as you're kind of going into Slack and these other channels, that's actually impacting their engagement, utilization, and productivity. And we see this across the board for a lot of different applications where you'll find a lot of insights that are specific to a certain company, where within that particular company, if somebody is spending time in XYZ, it actually shows a lot of different types of trends. And one of the things that's actually really interesting is we've actually been able to, with some of the companies we work with, predict agent churn on the basis of this data. So you can look at the data around who ends up staying at the company, who ends up kind of moving on, and you can start seeing interesting patterns as to how they're using different applications, what they're spending time on. And that allows you to kind of get a better sense of who's really engaging overall and who's more likely to kind of go look for another job in a short period of time. So one of the things we enable companies to do is to really get to the heart of which applications are helping versus hurting. We enabled A/B testing capability. So We work with one of our customers to actually develop this, and it's something we've rolled out across the board of quite a few other customers. But this is really allowing companies to kind of hold certain cohorts constant and then test other cohorts against different types of CRMs, different types of processes, tools, team structures, coaching processes. And you're actually able to see how that impacts the actual metrics and outcomes that you care about, whether it's utilization, reopen tickets, engagement, and a variety of other factors. So that really helps you to tease out how applications and other kind of areas impact your team. And this one is just an interesting one, which is also kind of surprising for a lot of customers we've had, which is that sometimes even as simple things, the hardware internet speed really does matter for your handle times. So we'll see a lot of differences in how agents are handling different tickets just based on whether or not they have the right hardware enablement. And this has actually been very interesting as agents have been working remotely, because a lot of times their at-home setup is very different than what they would have in a controlled environment in a contact center. So being able to kind of look into this and see how that is impacting, on the one hand, handle time, but on the other hand, really the agent experience itself, and whether they're getting frustrated and kind of having roadblocks that's preventing them from being really effective. And so again, we try to go into detail here and really tease out how these networks and applications impact specific agents and your overall team. All right.
Yeah, so thank you, Charlene. I always find it fascinating with the platform that we have. We're able to aggregate and learn so much about kind of more global experiences. So as I think about, there's a lot that each of you are being asked to do. I know for me, it was planning capacity, managing remote teams, optimizing technology, right? Driving compliance, coaching and enabling teams. And so in the middle of all that, you're trying to enable all this. It's a space of really applying something I think we're all familiar with, which is Agile as a software development process. And Agile is a familiar model, I think, that's used in software development and is part of the software DNA. But I think it can be transferred into the customer experience DNA. And just like product development, we can do that through technology instead of manual shadowing and observation. And so if you look at that, the hypothesis to adoption to analysis, how do you decide which strategic initiative to prioritize for your team? What hypothesis do you make, and what area do you make that around? And so with Finn, I think Charlene shared, we're able to get into this visibility into the process execution. And I think it's first what you need to be able to do is to understand how the process is being executed day to day. The ability to understand the variation on process execution and see where there's detours or roadblocks, or even what tool, as Charlene shared, is being used most effectively. You know, radical transparency can deliver transformational impact. If we go to the next slide, so you've identified a hypothesis, and now you're looking for root cause identification. And you can replace those time and motion studies. You don't need to sit and shoulder surf somebody or see true accounting of the steps to complete a process. It removes the bias from the evaluation process, and it also helps in QA and coaching. I think the result is a plentiful number of samples, which gives an accurate depiction of quality performance. This has enabled us to approach our customer experience in the same way many great companies build their products, as a continuous cycle of discovery and improvement. Charlie mentioned the A/B testing. I think about that as a critical piece of making things happen better and faster. And so let's say that a contact center wants to introduce a new SaaS application into the agent toolkit. Perhaps you wish to test a new template for common customer inquiries. It can be really risky to roll out an untested change to thousands of agents without knowing if the results will really improve the status quo. We focus on rapid experimentation and A/B testing with minimal effort or margin of error, so you're able to roll back things easily and test anything. Experimentation and A/B testing. I think the Fin customer experience technology generates a customized dashboard that compares the impact of the individual experiments. So you're able to have an experiment cohort and a control cohort and understand what's happening and the differences between the two. One example, we all know that experimentation is the key to rapid improvement and rapid innovation. An example of this, we've seen an e-commerce company roll out a new CRM that they believed would lower handle time and drive fewer sessions per case. When the CRM was launched, they launched it with a control cohort on the old system and an experiment group on the new system. And the teams were then able to monitor and compare the results. You can see here, after 2 months, the agents on the new CRM had handled time decrease by 27%, and their sessions per case dropped by 23%, or 27% improvement, decrease in handle time, and their sessions per case dropped 23%. I think I mixed them up. But really what this is sharing is that pretty quickly, I know I've done probably a good dozen system rollouts in my lifetime. And to be able to understand the impact of that prior to full rollout is just transformative in what you're able to do and how fast you're able to do it. So how do you then continue to optimize? We've created a platform on which you can test any change into your system and know immediately the impact. And if you're not seeing the impact you want, you can go back, shift your implementation, retest your new hypothesis or your new system or tool until you get the results or the outcome that you're looking for. I, like many of you, have created improvements in process, systems, workflow, knowledge, content, all of it, believing it would improve the experience and drive efficiency. And many times I never knew if it really did. And I've had to guess as to the results of that impact or wait for months to see and measure what's happened. So I think we can help you get to create an agile testing environment in any group, on any team, for any process. So, I think all of us in the CX world have to live with a bunch of different hats. And one of the biggest things each of us as leaders are asked to do is focus on the day-to-day operations running smoothly and effectively, and at the same time driving future improvement and growth. To do this well, you have to be able to get into the belly of the beast and understand the tactical day-to-day activities and process, and then go up and out to deliver transformation and growth. In every customer experience leadership role, I've been asked to run operations with no surprises while contributing to the growth of the business, kind of managing down and working it, and at the same time leading up and out. First, to do that, you've got to be able to focus on major optimization. So starting with the big boulders and building that plane while flying it. I think a good example of this was a company who, in the first weeks of running Fin, saw agents cutting and pasting customer data into Google Translate. And it turns out what they found was that the internal translation tool was not working. And so everyone was jumping out into Google Translate. So not only a bad experience for agents, but also a compliance risk. Another great example we've had around kind of these major insights very quickly. Another company found a big boulder pretty quickly. They had thousands of agents who were cutting and pasting from an internal marketing database, and it was happening at the end of all the cases, and it was taking 4 or 5 minutes of time to do it. And what they found out pretty quickly was that the email template for customer response was not working well. And so employees were going out to cut and paste the company logo and a signature line for every email response. For all this, right, as you're kind of removing those big boulders, it is about getting to that continuous measurement and monitoring of your core metrics for how your systems and tools are doing. So taking those big boulders out, getting yourself to a status quo and a baseline, and then being able to monitor and measure what's happening. And then, congratulations. You now are able to fly the plane smoothly without much effort, right? Once you can really understand what's happening, take out those big boulders, start to measure and do experimentation and improvement. It really is that simple on those big insights and observations to really, significantly improve the process and get to that autopilot type stage on your continuous operations. The more your day-to-day operations is on autopilot, so you've got the left side of this kind of on autopilot, and the more any deviations that will surface themselves are identified, the more you create energy across the team that can be allocated to improvement. I think when you look at, it's very similar on the continuous improvement side as it is on the improve the future or transform and grow. And as with the day-to-day, it's as simple as picking a cohort to pilot that transformation. Even radical transformation with new systems, tools, sales processes, growth initiatives. A recent example was the launch of a transformational nature at a hospitality company that we work with. And they were launching a new CRM. And so lots of time and focus was put into, and funding, right, to make a big leap in how they manage the customer relationship. And they were able to launch a specialized group into the new system and found immediately it was taking 10x longer for pages to load. Within hours, they were able to identify, regroup, and fix the system so that it was working the way they wanted it to. When making strategic changes, you're able to understand the impact at pilot prior to full system rollout and are able to truly validate the impact. Turn it over to you in a second. Let me see, where am I? I'm a little stuck on my system. It's dragging a little. Sorry about that, everyone. I think just to close on all of this, you're really able to move from building the plane while flying and putting in that true air traffic control, and at the same time being able to launch those rockets that drive real transformation and growth for your company.
Excellent. Thank you, Mary. Mm-hmm. So just a little bit, just to recap here about Fin, what we do, and this is our website, which is pretty easy to find, fin.com. We help optimize the entire agent journey. So the entirety of the journey from beyond just the CRM or ticketing system, but really all the different areas that your agents are going into. And that helps you to identify the ways to have more productive and engaged support teams. And ultimately, all of that translates into happier agents, better outcomes, and then ultimately happier customers. We've been used by some of the world's best-in-class teams. They've been using Fin across anywhere from a couple dozen to thousands and thousands and tens of thousands of agents. And this really has been quite instrumental for a lot of these folks as they've handled things like the pandemic or rapid growth or large evolutions in how they're doing business, and changes in their teams, changes in scope, changes in how they handle different industries. So this has been a instrumental tool for a lot of these companies as they've thought about those decisions and as they've thought about just making sure that they're keeping a finger on the pulse of how their teams are doing overall. And that's helped with things like coaching, identifying processes, SOPs, QA, and also kind of looking at technology, whether it's applications or even hardware and network, and how that impacts the experience overall. And ultimately, that helps with things that, and some of the metrics that we have here are looking at average handle times. Across our customer base, we've seen about a decrease of about 25% in average handle times. We've seen greater productivity and engagement. We've also looked at things like reducing risks. Things like the copy and paste example of taking customer data outside of your system and into applications that you otherwise wouldn't have any idea was happening. We've identified quite a few instances of those, and that's allowed these companies to actually go back and figure out an improvement in the process that prevents those kind of major business risks from hitting them. So we have a lot of research that we have published on the basis of the research we've done across the tens of millions of hours of data that we get annually. And the topic area for today is really looking at time and motion studies. And so you can download the full white paper at fin.com. There's a resources section. And I encourage you to check out quite a few of the other white papers we have. We can send around some of that content as well. But we publish this benchmark report. We can kind of dig into the details and try to understand some of the benchmarks we're seeing. We also talk about things like remote agents and what are some of the best practices we see there, some of the differences we've seen between remote agents and on-site agents, and how do you kind of manage around that? And then we also look at things, for instance, like how do you prevent agent churn, which is very important today because with the Great Resignation happening and the cost of just to your team, but also to your customers and the experience that they receive when there's too much turnover on a team. So all these resources are available on fin.com. I encourage you to check it out. And of course, you can also schedule a free technical consultation. A lot of customers actually come in and originally kind of look for data, and then they end up finding that there's something really useful when they start actually implementing Fin and getting a just more understanding of their own metrics. So with that, I think, Scott, if you want to kind of rejoin us.
Well, anyhow, Charlene and Mary, thank you. I really want to dig into a couple of things here, and I'm also going to ask the audience listening on a couple of ideas here. For clarification, Charlene, the 2022 customer benchmark report that you referenced earlier, I'd love to share that with our listeners if that's a separate report than the one I think you have on the screen right now. So if there's a way we could get a copy of that, I'd love to get it out to the community. So if you could help us on that. Yeah. Mary, I want to dig in with you first. And I'm going to ask you to kind of put on your hat when you were at Lyft. And before I ask you the question, I want to throw something out to the audience, the listeners, that as we think about the agent and journey and kind of how we measure workflow and process and agent experience, I'd love to hear comments from you to what you've experienced, what's working, maybe not been working, or still kind of keeping you up at night type of thing, because kind of the new normal is going to be around for, I think, a very long time of agents remote and all of that scenario. But Mary, the question I want to ask you is, I know the problem we're trying to solve, but what keeps getting in our way? And I know the importance of visibility. I know the importance of data. I know the importance of experimentation. But if you had to put your hat on back to the Lyft days as we're talking through this topic, and there's a lot of your peer groups that will listen to this, what would be just your thoughts of, why do we seem to still have struggle with it? Is it just purely a focus thing? Is it, I'm not going to answer for you, but love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah. So I think we have a lot coming at us. And so as I shared in that kind of continuum, there's a space of day-to-day, getting your operations under control. Every now and again, something might pop up, you've got to fire. At the same time, you're asking these leaders to be strategic thought leaders, to drive growth, to participate in an executive team. And so I just think there's probably no place else where there's continual work happening, right?
Mhm.
You've got a front line that's going 24/7 or whatever your hours of operation are. You've got a org and a whole company that you're engaging with. And I think when it comes to having so much, our best intention is to want to understand, right? We want to know what's going on in that agent experience. And
Mhm.
we get pulled in so many directions that we kind of do it here and do it there, right? We have moments of being able to do it. And to your point, it's so costly time wise, right? I've got to fly to Nashville, sit with my team, right? And so for me, it was having to set up the time specifically. So I would have to do everything with my family so that I could leave and go to Nashville for 3 weeks so I could just sit with the teams and really understand what was happening. And I think many of us don't have that kind of luxury to build into our schedule to engage at that level in observation and understanding on what's going on with the agent experience, even though I know it's paramount to everyone.
And I think, Mary, I think that's very honest and real, and I appreciate that. I'm also thinking, Mary, that in the metric you shared, if obviously if that's a fact, somewhat of a factual statement, I'm sure it is, but 275 missed productivity hours per agent on an annualized basis, or maybe inefficiency, or whatever we want to call that. Those metrics and financial considerations would be screaming over the top and making this number one priority in how we get to the CFOs and some of the budget speak. Again, is it just a recognition thing, an understanding thing? Again, the data thing, but I mean, that's quite large of hours that you could do some simple math with.
And so I know for me, I would try and find all those big numbers that would drive change, right? So
Mhm.
I would turn my numbers into hours spent with drivers, right? So instead of number of contacts, how many hours are we spending with drivers, right? And to talk with an organization when you're talking in growth and customer terms is huge. I could get to those aggregate numbers pretty easily, right? When it comes to productivity, it's hard to see, right? I mean, it just
Yeah.
truly is. You have pieces.
Mhm.
And so you're having to put pieces together to come to kind of a generalized number of where the opportunity is. And I think that's what's slows us down in being able to get that kind of buy-in and support, because it is hard to get a full number of productivity impact when it's so many different use cases or so many things that you're having to add together to get to that holistic number.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think that's very true. And I think, again, it just sort of reinforces, I would share with our community, the importance of partnering with someone like a Finn that can really take that effort and ease of use and put it into play and give the kind of visibilities. Because I think the need for this discussion is not going to go away. It's not going to change. It's going to continue to be elevated. And we as a group of leaders, how we've got to look at this particular pocket of it. Mary, again, another quick question is, you gave some mini case studies there. Thank you. I always love case studies. And you gave some of the industries, I think, around those case studies. But how you were getting to the baseline, how you were doing some of the monitoring, measuring. My question is, was there anything in those client case studies that after kind of start to end that became sort of a unplanned event or a lesson learned or something? If I would have done differently, I would have done this. I always like to look at the opportunities where we can learn from that. Would there be anything come to mind, Mary, from your experience in those case studies?
Yeah, one of the things, and I'm sorry, I'm getting a little bit of reverb. One of the things I think when you pull back and think about it at a higher level is the aha or the insight for many of these customers of, oh my gosh, how much have I launched without really knowing the impact, right? And so there's that space of learning, like it is really beneficial to slow down and pilot. And I think sometimes we forget that, right? Because we're so wanting to get to the finish line and the outcome that the new tool or the new process that we believe it's going to give us. And I think the biggest lesson I've seen is that it is okay. Slow down a little bit, pilot something, right? Being able to do that kind of pilot work and learn before you do the full rollout. And we all know that, right? We all know that. And yet sometimes we're going so fast, we forget to make sure that we're taking the time between pilot and full implementation to really understand the learnings and the changes.
Yeah. Charlene, I'm told a lot, and I'm going to ask you this a lot of times, is this expensive? And I think there's lots of ways you could put an ROI case together based on some of the productivity measurements that we've discussed. But number two is data, the data dilemma. Like I don't know if my current data, I'm saying it's all over the place or there's so much out there, this is just another data lake or a data thing that I've got to manage to and get perspective. I don't know, Charlene, if you could disagree with any of that I just said, but I mean, is there a different perspective or take, again, when I think of kind of data overload and data management?
Yeah, on the expensive question, right? I think when you look at the size of some of these teams and a lot of the numbers that we're looking at in terms of just how much opportunity there is, it is, in fact, I think it's actually really cheap for what you're getting, right? Which is, like for some of our customers, this is tens of millions of dollars, if not more, of value. Because if you can just move the needle a little bit on some of the areas that you would not have seen otherwise, that's really important for your organization. In terms of the data itself, it depends on what kind of other data that folks are looking at. I think I haven't seen anything else that really provides this level of visibility into the agent experience, the agent journey itself. There's a lot of data out there on, the customer experience. There's areas of the customer journey that kind of are out there, but what is really kind of missing is being able to deep dive into what actually goes into that customer experience and being able to fix that. And that's where this data really comes in, and it gives you sort of a guidance as to, okay, what can I actually do to move the needle? So that's one of the things I think it's, of course, everyone's always going to have a lot of data. It's going to be overwhelming at any period of time. But this is an area where we haven't really seen anything else existing out there. And it's critical insights that, again, produce a lot of value for the customers that we have. And we see it in, a lot of the customers we have in their first year, they kind of use it for one team or one group. And then by the second year, we've seen a lot of customers 5 to 10x their investments because they just get so much value out of what they're seeing.
And Chad, I think one of the other things is we try to highlight, not have you have to guess as to the analytics. Like, here's the opportunity. We're going to try and point you to that instead of giving you some data flat file that you have to get those insights out of all by yourself.
Yeah, and one thing I'll throw out, and thank you, Charlene, for that, and Mary, the follow-up, but, one thing I would really offer to the community of execs in the know, Mary, you're a trusted source in the community, and I know you're so willing to give opinions and ideas and just, just whatever could be. And, if you could help run flank at anybody who wants to speak with you, Mary, just to kind of say, here's my situation. What would you think, Mary? I know you'd be willing to give of yourself of that. So thank you. And if you want to get in touch with Mary directly, you can reach out to me, chad@execsno.com, and I'm happy to put you in touch with Mary. A couple of quick ones here, and then I'll leave with sort of hopefully a positive note of change and a positive note of reflection. One thing in regards to the Fin platform, do you offer a video recording capability or anything around video? Is there something in that component? Or is there? Yeah. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Charlie.
Yeah, the simple answer is yes. We do have video recording that is something that our customers, it's optional, and you can kind of set parameters for how the video recording is actually done. But we allow companies to screen record to see exactly what agents are working on.
Interesting. Okay, thank you for that clarification. And again, I think that the rich insights that you get from the reporting and stuff, there's so many ways we could have a conversation in regards to that too. Let's leave on this. I'd love to get the 2022 customer benchmark report that was referenced in today's webinar and get that offered out to the community. Charlene and Mary, for anyone that's listened to this conversation, would there be, just with your experiences and knowledge and the discussion we've had today, would there be a certain recommendation or advice or something you'd like to leave this audience with as far as we continue our pursuit of trying to achieve this?
Yeah, I can jump in. I think the thing I'd just say is, if there is an opportunity where you're going through change or transition, like, we're happy to pilot stuff, right? I mean, there's a space of being able to demonstrate this. We're really confident in the product that we've built and what it's able to do. And at the same time, we're also able to kind of look at unique situations for clients. So, if you're about to go and get a BPO or a partner, you're about to roll out a CRM, right? Those are all some great times with which to leverage this kind of technology and really understand the benefits.
Charlene, any last words of encouragement, advice, or suggestion?
Yeah. I guess for me, what's interesting about Fin is this is something that if you look at like product development or marketing, there's for decades now, we've had a lot of analytics software out there that exists that allows you to kind of really instrument, understand when you build something or when you launch a campaign, what is happening, what exactly, went into that, being able to A/B test different kind of outcomes and optimize on a continuous basis. That's sort of the expectation in those spaces because they're such critical spaces. And what till now hasn't really existed much is a similar kind of situation for operations work. So what Fin does, and this kind of goes back to our kind of core DNA, is we take that instrumentation, we take that performance-based, objective-based measurement, and we apply it into the people operations space, because we believe that when you make this information transparent and when you make people understand the impact of what's happening, that allows this entire industry to really move forward and to really kind of take their seat at the table. So I think that's kind of the original thinking behind Fin, and that's something I think we'll see over time as the industry matures, that's going to become the de facto standard, because that just makes for better companies, makes for better operations, makes for better outcomes. And I think we're excited to be a part of that transformation and to kind of lead the way.
And I'll share with the audience, when I think of the number of topics facing us as CX leaders and as an industry practitioner group, I would put today's conversation in the top 3 of how we're looking at agent journey, agent experience, agent success. And again, this is something we've got to continue to stay very close and monitor on. I really want to say, Mary and Charlene, thank you for willing to take some time. One of the things Execs to Know we try to do is make our conversations very honest, real, and really trying to peel the onion back in the conversational topic. So I really appreciate your willingness to come on and help us through this journey and this particular discussion. So thank you so much. For the rest of our audience, this will conclude today's webinar. If you have any other questions, please reach out to me, chad@execsknow.com. Happy to do whatever I can. You're not on this journey alone. There are many, many people like you in our community that are willing to share their experiences, share their opinions and ideas. So like anything, just get involved, and there's a whole community waiting for you. So thank you for your listenership, and thank you for your time. Mary Charlene, thank you so much.
Thank you, Chad.
Thank you, Chad.